Welcome to Kidney Health Interview. This is a place to get inspired and moved by renal warrior stories. Hello everyone, this is Natalia with a Kidney Health Interview, and I'm so thrilled to invite Gabrielle to join us today. Hi Gabrielle, welcome to Kidney Health Interview.
Hey, Natalia, thanks for having me today.
How was your day? It's Friday evening.
My day was good. I actually got some decent sleep last night. And so that when I get decent sleep, I feel limitless. I feel like I can actually get stuff done. I had enough energy to play with my son today and get some work done. So today was a good Friday, one of the best Fridays I've had in a long time.
I'm so glad to hear this. And tell me more
Yep.
about your son. How old is he, and is it he fun to be around?
Oh, he's a rambunctious rascal. Yeah, I love him. He's 1 year old. His name is Antoine Lamar Davis Jr. He's named after his father. We call him AJ, and he is a ball full of energy, and he's a big boy. We just had his 1 year follow-up, and he is almost 23 pounds and 2 feet 6 inches. So he looks maybe like a 2 year old. He's like in the 80th percentile when it comes to height. So he's a handful, but we love him. He's so joyful, wakes up with a smile, and he's the light of our life right now. So we couldn't ask for a better boy.
This is so wonderful. And so as you said, he just had birthday. So happy belated birthday to your son.
Thank you. Yeah, we had a jungle themed birthday for him.
That's fun. Yeah. And, this is just amazing that even in 2020, we find in our ways to have time to celebrate and enjoy our
Oh,
life,
yeah.
even there are so many new ways of living and adjusting.
Yeah.
Also, I wonder how was 2020 has been for you and your lifestyle?
Well, 2020 actually gave me quite a challenge. I have been in the hospital more than I've had lupus. Every month since March, I've been in the hospital for something, literally. So, March it was pneumonia, April was a blood clot, May was that my levels for my blood thinners was off. Um, June was something I don't remember. You lose count in July. The latest hospitalization was colitis. I don't even know how I got it. It was just acute, and it caused me so much pain. And it actually messed with my stomach catheter that I have for dialysis. So we had to get that figured out. Yeah. So it's been quite a 2020, but in that, the pandemic brought a little bit of something that we wanted, which was to work from home and be with our son, who is growing rapidly. We've got to see him just develop his little personality, and we even saw first steps last weekend. So, one thing that 2020 has brought for everybody is, isolation and some different ways of doing life. For us, it's been very beneficial because my husband and I both get to work from home, and we get to see our son who is with us to, develop. And I'm not sure outside of the pandemic if we would have been able to do that. So it's been a little bitter. It has been a lot of sweet. So I can't complain too much. But yeah, it's definitely been a roller coaster this year.
That sounds for sure. And Gabrielle, also, you have been fighting with kidney disease and lupus for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the status now of your kidney disease and lupus at the moment?
Yeah, well, I was diagnosed in 2009. And shortly after that diagnosis, in like 2010 or 2011, my doctor tested me for lupus nephritis, and it came up that I did have lupus nephritis. I think he might have done some urine tests along with blood tests, and came up positive for kidney disease. And we were game planning, and I was taking the introductory medications that a lot of lupus nephritis, and that's what it is, lupus nephritis, kidney inflammation. That's what the disease is called, that a lot of lupus kidney patients would take, which is Cellcept, or the generic name is mycophenolate. And I was given that. And honestly, I was so hard-headed then. I was in my late 20s and I was in denial, and I would take it some days and I wouldn't take it others. The crazy thing about kidney disease is that it's so silent. There's not really any indication. You don't really feel it until you're later in stages. And so I didn't feel it. And so I thought it was just something that I could play around with, which was crazy. It was really crazy to think that way. And I think it hurt me in the long run because I wasn't diligent the way I needed to be. And it developed into something that was no coming back from. I mean, by 2010, 2011, I had already developed scarring in my kidneys that was not reversible. And so by the time we really got to it, I think I was in stage 4. And I was holding steady for a little while. For about 3 years, I got in the best shape of my life. I ate well. By looking at me, you couldn't tell I had anything going on. I was up at 6. I was exercising with the coach. And then in May 2016, it was around my birthday, I went out to eat. And they tell you not to eat a lot of red meat because it's hard to process. Well, I was exercising and I was doing my thing, and I was still a little hard-headed. I was better than I used to be. But I saved my appetite to eat a 16-ounce steak at one of the finest restaurants in Orlando called Ocean Prime, and their steaks are to die for. I finished just about the whole thing that night, and I paid for it because later that week, I don't even think it was 3 or 4 days later, I think we went on my birthday, and maybe that weekend I was in the hospital, and my kidney disease went down so much, and basically that was the beginning of my journey to dialysis. And as I told you in our conversation we had before, I was stubborn. I waited until about, I was at 4%. I think you qualify for, I think it's, you qualify at 25% maybe for transplant and dialysis. And I was at 4%, which tells you just how far away I was from pretty much not being here or being in a worse state than I was in. I was still very much working. I was still very much busy. And I did not want to interfere with my lifestyle and what I was doing. And so my dialysis journey began in November of 2016 at 4% kidney failure, 4% kidney function.
Mm-hmm.
I was at end stage renal disease for sure at that point.
Yeah, that's, I really appreciate you so open about some of the aspect. Didn't want to give up something that felt so comfortable and truly be in your life. But sometimes those decisions come into our lives, and it's so important to face them and to act on them. So you learn certainly a lot of lessons through your journey. And I'm looking forward today to discuss every aspect of your diagnosis management to really shine some light and share more awareness across kidney population about the various ways to approach diagnosis. So as you mentioned that your lupus diagnosis have been sudden and surprising for you. So I wonder, how have you been diagnosed with lupus, and if you ever had a family history or idea about having a risk of developing autoimmune disease?
I like to say that lupus has 6 degrees of separation. There's always someone around you who is dealing with lupus. Before I was diagnosed in July of 2009, I didn't know a lot about lupus. I heard it around my family a little bit. I heard the word and didn't really know what it was. I didn't know it was an autoimmune disease. But as soon as I was diagnosed, and I said I was diagnosed with it, it was almost like just various people would pop up in my life. And I bet you talk to any lupus patient and you'll find that there are so many people directly or indirectly related or affiliated or associated with you who are dealing with lupus. And it's just crazy how your eyes kind of open to who's around you who's dealing with it. And so, like I had no idea about lupus. And when I opened up about it, I had a cousin on my mother's side who dealt with it. I had another cousin on my mother's side who dealt with it. And I had an aunt-in-law on my husband's side who was diagnosed, who is dealing with it. So since my diagnosis in 2009, I've had two or three family members who are dealing with it. One unfortunately passed away. And so that's why I have a lot of passion and being an advocate and really being transparent with my story, because I want people to know that, I'm not going to fake the lows for you, but I'm definitely going to share that you can live with this disease, and there is hope, and there is a way to live well with it. I want to be an example of living well with lupus, because I feel like my cousin, it gets so bad sometimes, and sometimes we just lose the fight. It's the truth. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes it might be inevitable, the disease progresses, right? Nobody wants to really talk about that. And I think at her journey, she had to make the decision for herself. I don't know where her mental health was. And that's why I talk a lot about, where are you mentally? Where are you spiritually? Where are you emotionally? Because that's the, intangibles that really direct our path on how we treat ourselves and take care of ourselves. Like, what's important to you? What's a priority? And so, that's how lupus came into my life. And, it opened up when I was diagnosed, like I say, and I found that family members were affected by it. So now my cousin that is living, I stay in touch with her to make sure, and was definitely in the fight with her at the beginning of her diagnosis, because that's the hardest road, I think, when your world is just tumbles down, when you have to make changes, when you have tons of doctor's appointments and you have to negotiate that with work. That's when the rubber hits the road, and you have to make some choices about what you're going to do to take care of yourself. So definitely been able to help my family through that, and be a resource for them. And I'm grateful.
Yeah. Well, Gabrielle, I certainly hear so much wisdom and so much lessons learned you have through your journey, fighting with lupus and lupus nephritis and ESRD, and certainly sharing awareness about your journey and you overcoming those struggles and building happiness and balance and sometimes compromise. I think will be so inspiring for our audience. So looking forward to learn more about your personal experience. How have you been diagnosed with lupus, and how have lupus diagnosis changed your life?
Yeah. Well, I have the craziest of stories. I was a newlywed in 2009, Valentine's Day, and that's when lupus came into my life. I had a regular work day, nothing unusual. And I looked forward to spending Valentine's Day night with my newlywed husband, and we had plans. Um, and
Sounds so romantic. It just
yeah,
sounds
well,
like the most romantic day.
it started romantic, and it did not end very romantic. And, by the end of the day, I had started to have some pains and aches and just a lot of achiness, like I had worked out really hard or ran a marathon. I was very, very stiff. I felt like just like I had iron all over my body, like I was in armor, just very stiff. And I was popping a lot of Tylenol that day, because I was like, what is going on with me? My first instinct is to, get all this inflammation out. And I thought I was just nervous or whatever. And so I booked a massage before we started our evening, because I really wanted to be, open and able to receive everything that was going on.
Yeah, reduce tension,
Yeah,
positive, relaxed,
yes,
of course. Yeah.
exactly. I wanted to be in the right mindset, in the right frame of mind. And so I booked a massage thinking, okay, we'll just work the kinks out. And that ended up being the worst decision I could have made that day, because what was going on in my body was inflammation from lupus, and I didn't know at the time. And, the massage therapist was great, but I thought she was terrible at the time, because basically she was spreading inflammation through my body. And, back in those days, I didn't really have the power that I have now to speak up and say, hey, something's wrong. Something's not feeling right. I thought this pain through my body was just getting the kinks out. That's how it's supposed to feel. And so I left there wobbling out of the office with so much pain. And so I drove to Tampa, Florida. I was in Orlando at the time to meet my fiance, because we had plans, right? And those were quickly canceled as the inflammation got worse. I was very fatigued, very much just all over the place mentally. I was very dehydrated. And so I ended up in the ER instead of, where we were supposed to be that night. I ended up staying 4 days in the hospital. Even though it was 12 years ago, there was not very much information at the time in the general population of doctors about lupus. even now, you'll find a lot of general doctors don't know about lupus. I don't think they get a lot of time learning about it. There's a certain number of percentage of their education that they get on lupus, and it's not a lot. And so that's what I've experienced when I was in the hospital in 2009. All they could tell me is that I was dehydrated. And so they filled me up with fluids, and that my white blood cell count was off. That's it. He had no other clue as to what was going on. It wasn't until I talked to my general doctor, and he was an Hispanic male, and he knew what connective tissue disease looked like, and he knew what lupus looked like in minority patients, that he referred me to a rheumatologist. And in July 2009 is when I found out and was formally diagnosed with lupus, which you would think that that's a long time to be diagnosed. But what you'll find is when you go from patient to patient, you'll find that some diagnosis takes years, because what they call lupus is the great masquerader. There's so many symptoms that could be this or that combination of symptoms that you can't rule out this. And so there's several tests that people have to go through to make sure that it is lupus before there's a formal diagnosis. So in a bittersweet way, I was lucky and blessed to be diagnosed as soon as I was, to be able to start treatment as soon as I did.
Gabrielle, what you said is so true. I've heard from a number of patients who came to our podcast to share their lupus story, the story of taking some time to being diagnosed, or actually even insisting to taking certain labs to get the diagnosis, and the doctor won't necessarily were open to testing them for lupus.
That's right.
So this is something that's important to share awareness about, that there are certain symptoms, and especially for young women from 15 to 45.
That's right.
Lupus could be one of the reasons when someone has the flare-ups and having various symptoms. So I'm glad you shared your experience with us. Yes. And one thing I want to compliment you, you have this pleasant voice and just very well established presentation skills. Do you work as an educator or professor?
Well, my background is in communications. You sought me out. Yeah. And I have a degree in newspaper journalism. And with the job, you just learn how to do interviews and be ready. So I guess that's helped me in my advocacy. And it helps just to educate people too, that they see that not only have you been through it, but you know how to make it relatable to them. So, you know, I use any gift that I have to pour into advocacy to make sure that I can relate to the people that I'm talking to.
Certainly, definitely. Yeah. I'm learning so much from you. Just listening is the way how you convey your story, but you're able to set up that aspect of learning and understanding. So really appreciate that you put in all your skills to share awareness and giving our audience opportunity to learn. So when you were diagnosed with lupus, were you prepared for the diagnosis, and how did you take it, as well as how did you share the news with your fiance at that time, husband?
Yeah, I was not ready. The way that I usually deal with hard things is isolation and denial and pride, to be honest with you. The way I grew up is just what is plan B, what's the next step. And so there wasn't a lot of room to negotiate or really process things emotionally, which hurt me in the long run. And I'm so glad that I'm not ashamed to say that I've been in therapy for 7 years. I'm not ashamed at all to say that I'm getting help on processing hard news. I'm getting help in processing different life-changing things. And lupus was definitely at the top of the list and talking about. So as a young Gabrielle, learning that I had lupus in 2009, I took it as something that I can beat. It's something that I'm, you know, confidently, but very naive. You know, because the confident Gabrielle was not backing it up with action. I was not taking my medication the way I should have been. I was not maybe eating the way I should have been. Definitely wasn't open as I should have been with my fiance. And so we had to grow in that, to be more transparent with each other. Not only me telling him how I felt, but listening to how it is for him. as my husband and as someone who loves me, how it's, hard for him to hear that I'm sick, you know what I'm saying? And talk to him, transparently about how he can support me. A lot of women, especially minority women, have this stigma, have this, I don't want to say, there's this role, I think, that we've been pushed into, to be this strong woman, to be the backbone of the family, to be the one with the answers. And I grew up wanting to be that, wanting to be half of, the marriage, half of this. But marriage and relationship, I might be 30 and he might be 70. I might be 50 and he might be 50. I might be 20, he might be 80, or I might be 80 and he'd be 20 that day. So there was definitely a lot of maturing and growing that had to happen. And there's a silver lining in that, right? Because who knows if we would have been there if lupus had came about. I might have still been a busybody thinking I could do everything for everybody. I wouldn't have boundaries. Lupus definitely helped me with that, to set boundaries, to say, no, I can't do that today, but I can do this. I don't feel well today. I don't want to talk. You know what I'm saying? Can you feed AJ today? I can't do it. I need to go lay down today. And that needs to be okay. And honestly, I don't want to act like I'm some hero and then I figured it all out, because as a mom, I still deal with mom guilt. As a wife, I still feel with wife guilt that I'm not available all the time to do everything I want to do for my family. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I didn't deal very well with it, but I grew in my knowledge and I grew in a better way to deal with it. And I found it to be very beneficial for me, to be open and transparent about the things that were going on. And you'll be surprised who is in your corner. I've had total strangers help me out. I've gained so many friends in the community. The lupus community is phenomenal. I don't think there's any other community, maybe other than the cancer community, that people come together and really are on your side, really go hard for you. And you just learn of family and friends that will step up in your time of need. When in the beginning, I was actually indirectly refusing help because I wouldn't talk about what was going on. I was suffering in silence, doing things that I shouldn't have done because it was too much on my body. But I had made a promise and I had given my word, and I didn't want to go against my word. And so I'm hoping that someone out there learns that your word is important, but so is your life. And you need to choose you. You need to learn to choose you.
Yeah, that is phenomenal to hear your reflections and to what you said, that being very type A and being really focused on giving and helping others all the time, and knowing that you have to help and serve everyone versus having time for yourself, and adjusting priorities could be one of the most important aspects of managing life in general, but also chronic illness. I wonder, was it a breakthrough moment that enlightened you to change the way how you were responding to situations and really think about Gabrielle and her health and well-being?
Absolutely. There were definitely milestones along the way. I would say my kidney diagnosis was a wake-up call for sure. Hearing that, you have kidney scarring, knowing that I wasn't taking my medicine the right way, and there were certain things that I did, definitely made me wake up and start taking my health seriously. Having to be on dialysis was another milestone that helped me realize that I need to straighten up a little bit more in my, what I'm eating and exercising and, different things that I do and what I need to give up, what needs to become a priority for me, maybe some relationships that I need to let go. So there were a couple of milestones along the way that helped me realize and kind of smack me into reality that, there's some decisions that needs to be made for you to have a better quality of life. And it is possible if you make yourself a priority. And those were my wake-up calls for sure.
Yeah, those are very important realizations, and I'm sure anyone listening us could agree to those, or maybe aspired to reflect on this.
Learn to say no for sure.
Also, lupus nephritis certainly is a very common and very severe progression of lupus. And that could be a very traumatizing diagnosis, but sometimes a sense of denial and just wanting life back, or living that life that you had at the moment, might make it even more difficult to accept and work with it. So how was your approach, and were you able to start managing your health overall during the diagnosis with lupus nephritis?
Yeah, well, my approach was listening to my doctors and also making sure that I ate healthy. There's a kidney diet. Let's just say that there's a renal diet where things are so different from the normal diet. So different. So different. Like, I grew up eating wheat bread, right? And so they stress that you don't eat wheat bread, that you eat maybe white bread instead. And I wasn't a soda girl, but even in the sodas, no dark sodas, Sprite and the clear. If you're going to drink sodas, make sure that it's clear. Watch your potassium levels. There's just different aspects of managing lupus nephritis that you never dream that you have to do. Before dialysis, and kidney disease came in, they were saying limit your protein. Well, what does that look like? Well, they're saying, have a hand, protein the size of your hand for each meal. Shouldn't be more than that. Well, I'm used to eating chicken. I'm used to eating turkey. I'm used to eating burgers, and it was hard limiting my protein, and so I tried various things. I went vegetarian for a while. I stopped eating certain foods that had too much phosphorus and too much potassium. And so little by little, I tweaked my diet to a place where I eat mostly proteins and vegetables and fruits for the most part. Sometimes I allow myself a little fries. Sometimes I allow myself a little pizza, but I don't do that every weekend like I used to. I don't eat out every weekend like I used to. And if I eat out, I try to make sure that it's within reason, and then I stick to what I'm doing. So it's just been sensible. It's not hard. Let me rephrase that. It's hard at first because I have some particular issues. I am allergic to seafood, and seafood would be phenomenal to eat for a lupus nephritis diet, but it's cut out for me because even before lupus was introduced into my life, seafood was off limits. So some people might get seafood, your protein from chicken, turkey, beef. Seafood is cut out, which is, whole world of delicious food. I'm jealous of my husband because he loves seafood and can eat
living in
seafood.
Florida, of course, there are so many places like lobster and shrimp and all the fun appetizers.
So him and his salmon he makes all the time. I'm so jealous because I can't eat it. So there's a lot of tweaking and things that I had to figure out what I can eat, what falls into my diet that I can do. That I learned that I needed a kidney transplant in the craziest way. It seems like I have craziest stories about my lupus journey, my lupus nephritis journey. I actually learned over the phone that I needed a transplant at work, which was, as you can imagine, traumatizing going into work, not knowing that you're going to get a phone call like that. I had to leave for the day because I was so overcome with emotion, not knowing what that meant for my life. Yeah. I mean, because I had gotten a test and I didn't hear back from my doctor for weeks. And I'm like, why don't I know what's going on with my kidney so bad? Finally, I just called him, and he called me at work, and I felt like he was really beating around the bush because we were talking about a treatment called Rituxan that could help with kidney function. And he was saying that I was even past that. And I'm saying, so what are you saying? And he's like, well, you're going to need a transplant. And I was done for the day. I left the office for a day to kind of pull myself together. And my boss, who, and this is people in general, looking back at it, I don't fault her. But her words to me was, at least it wasn't cancer. And, that can be just as insensitive as just total denial and dismissal. And so if I could say one thing about, approaching someone who learns news like that, is to listen and just to hear them out before you share advice. Because she was really trying to lift me up as if you know, you have a glimmer of hope because it's not cancer. And, you know, people in the United States and beyond live with kidney disease, and it's a hard disease to live with. It's life-changing. And so I would just give advice to people who want to offer advice and trying to, you know, have encouragement for people, is just to listen and to see how they can be helpful at first before you offer advice. So that's my transplant, learning of my transplant story.
This sounds really traumatizing, to be at work and receive the news that you were not expecting at all.
Yeah.
And then the first time where you could receive some support and understanding, you received something that was even more damaging.
Yeah.
I was like, well, and I think you brought so many important points in this about how medical team has to speak about the diagnosis and prepare patients for this, as well as people who may be less aware of kidney disease. They need to learn their language around approaching someone who just learns the news like yours.
Yeah, there's a lot of education that needs to be brought, not only for lupus, but for lupus nephritis patients. And I am actually working with a couple of companies to bring advocacy and to really bring passion and awareness to lupus nephritis patients, especially those on dialysis, because the hope is for those who have active kidney disease, right? And for them to restore kidney function. What can be done to restore? And I'm a person who a lot of pharmaceutical companies forget about. A lot of, you know, educators and doctors kind of just treat for maintenance. And it, you know, so I want to bring passion and awareness to those who have end-stage renal disease and living better, you know, and how to deal with diagnosis and, you know, telling them that it's not necessarily the end, you know, of your life. You can still live well and have a semblance of joy and happiness and all those things everybody else does out there, you know?
Yeah, and I think that is amazing that with your own experience, you can bring that passion and knowledge. And really, with the patient advocacy, this is only one way to improve the quality of care for patients. Tell me a little bit more about your CKD management and how have you been approaching dialysis, and how have you been reflecting on transitioning to dialysis, and what kind of help have you received that eventually allow you to accept the new way of living?
Yeah. Well, like I told you, I have a therapist, or I had a therapist before I started my dialysis, which I'm very blessed to have, because that was definitely a resource that I used to come to the decision to finally be on dialysis, because I was at 4% and I was fighting tooth and nail. And when I say I was presented with, you're eventually going to have to go on dialysis, but not, you know, we don't have to do it yet, but you're eventually going to have to go on dialysis. And, you know, I would just skip along as if, you know, as if it wasn't going to come. And eventually, lo and behold, I had to go on dialysis. And so the way I approached it was, okay, you know, it was a milestone in opening up my eyes. And I really have to be serious about my medicine. I really have to make sure that the treatment plan that I'm on is working for me. I really have to be open with my doctors. And I really have to talk about how this has changed my world. I really have to be open. And like I told you before, I am a person that likes to be the helper, not the one to receive help. And that's one of the things that I had to learn, is that I need help to process how this has changed my life. And I see dialysis as a lifeline. There are days that I don't. There are days that I see it as the old ball and chain. A lot of times I kid that Baxter, I name my machine Baxter because Baxter is the manufacturing company that makes the machine that I use and the solution full of boxes that you might see behind me.
They require a lot of storage, don't they?
They do.
Wow. This is your room just with the supplies for your peritoneal dialysis.
That's right.
Wow.
And thankfully, we have an office where I can store my supplies. People sometimes have to see it out in the open where they live. And I'm sorry, I don't know if I could do that. So I'm blessed that I have a room where I can hide it away. But I lovingly and sarcastically call my Baxter machine my boyfriend. And I say, me and my boyfriend Baxter, along with my husband, are going on a trip. And I approached it as, I'm not going to let this disease dictate where I go. Now, are there limitations? I'm not going to travel outside the country because I'm on the transplant list. And I don't want to risk my number being called and I'm in Asia somewhere. So I'm going to hold off out of the country travel. Some people don't. It's a decision that we all make. But I approached it and I'm going to try to live as regularly as I can, but allow myself the care and treatment that I need. So with Baxter over here, I am on the machine 8 hours a night. And then I'm dwelling with my belly full of solution for 3. So that's 11 hours of care every day that I have to do. And it's a lot. But I found a way by talking to my dialysis nurses and saying 10 hours on the machine with my son is not going to work. I need another solution. And when you open your mouth and you talk about what works for you and what doesn't, they are more than willing to work with you to come up with a solution that would work for your life. And so now I have 3 hours off the machine, not plugged in, not hooked up, where I can clean up around the house. I can play with my son. I can be with my husband. I can cook dinner. I can do whatever I need to do. And then 8 hours, I'm asleep anyway. So I'm doing my dialysis while I'm sleeping. I get up in the morning and we do it again. And that's my life. I also travel with my machine. Is it easy? No. But guess what? I get to go to New Orleans. I get to go to Pensacola. I get to go to Tampa to visit my family. I get to go to Missouri to see my dad. I mean, I try not to let it slow me down and be smart about it at the same time. That's what I didn't have early in my diagnosis. I was confident but stupid. I'm just going to put it plainly. And now I am confident and smart with the decisions that I make. So I have the best quality outcomes. And so I can live my life. I'm traveling. I'm doing things that everybody else does. Now, has this pandemic stopped me in my tracks? Most definitely. Most definitely. I miss my friends. I missed going out, doing whatever I want to do, but I got to be smart, right? It's another thing that we have to bring it in a little bit so we can still have some fun. I'm allowing myself a trip to Target. Ooh, I mean, it's the thrill of my life right now. And I'm in there masked up. I'm looking at the little beauty section on there's a new cleanser I can buy. That's the thrill of my life, looking for clothes for my son, seeing what he needs and providing for him. Just as our journey in life changes, our journey in lupus and how we take care of ourselves with whatever's going on in the world, how it affects us, we have to tweak and we have to find the joy in everything. And so my approach is living as regular as possible. I see the chest catheter, I'll pull it out. I'm not ashamed to do that. I went in a classroom and I did that the same. This is my chest catheter right now. This is where blood is exchanged every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. I had some vanity issues with that. I'm not going to lie to you. I felt like I was a part of the matrix. I had tubes hanging out of me. I have a new, stomach catheter. I'll just, I got that going on now. And so I felt like some creature out of another world. But my husband is so amazing. I think he has like rose-colored glasses because he still thinks I'm the most beautiful and sexiest woman out here. He does not care about the tubes. He does not care about the tubes. And so I started not to care about the tubes. And growth is being able to look in the mirror and actually see the beauty. Tubes hanging out, hair uncombed, and everything. And it's because I've accepted that this is just where I'm in life. This is not necessarily where I have to stay. And I have an amazing family. And most of all, I have an amazing husband who is like, what's that? I don't care. You still gonna get this love.
Well,
he does not care.
That's
you know what
so
I'm saying?
Wonderful. I'm just so amazed to hear your reflections and how important to have a good support system and understanding spouse who are there for you and help you to have that confidence and support you in the moments where you need to be supported and being acknowledged. You are beautiful, you're attractive. It's so important for women to know, but also demand and know that they deserve to have this. How have you started planning and traveling? Was it something that you always knew, that you never stopped traveling?
Always been travelers. And we just decided to keep traveling. We learned what we needed to do. Now, when I was on peritoneal dialysis, which is what you saw me show with the stomach catheter, we just learned what we needed to do. What were the airport regulations? I learned that I needed a letter. I learned that I needed to pack my machine a certain way. I learned that I needed good luggage for my machine because not everybody respected my machine. And, you know, there's been a couple of times that my machine has been broken and has had to be replaced.
God.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's been some horror stories about you can't bring that on the plane and this and that. I've had to argue a lot of flight attendants down. And I just got smart about it. I'd say there's a front carriage in the front where you can put this. I don't have to put it overhead, and they allow me to go on the plane first. So there's a lot of allowances, and people need to know you are not charged for this because it's medical devices. You know, I've not had to come across a time where I had to be charged for it yet, but you just never know because a lot of people out there are uneducated. A lot of people are not out there ready to take your machine. And a lot of people, you know, it weighs a lot and all this stuff, but they have to take it because it's a medical device. There's sometimes where I have to bring the solution with me, or you can get it shipped ahead to where you're staying. So if I was staying at a hotel and for our dialysis office, they require you to plan at least 2 weeks in advance. So there's not a lot of spontaneity, but you can still travel. So 2 weeks in advance, I would say, hey, I'm traveling to such and such. Okay, well, let me find the nearest dialysis office to you for some reason. If you need to go in, you can go to that one if you need treatment or whatever, and that they know that you're in town or whatever, and they're notified. So there's a process, definitely. And let me tell you, one time when I was in DC for Lupus Advocacy Day on the Hill of all places, I forgot my freaking plug to my machine. So I had everything. I had my dialysis solution, everything ready to go, but didn't have a plug. And the sweet lady at the DC clinic saved my life. She found a plug for dialysis. I had to go without dialysis for a day, but I was able to get treatment while I was in DC, and I was so, so grateful. Thankfully, I was at a good place in my lupus journey that I was able to go without a day, and I was fine. But yeah, so we found a plug, and I found the nearest DC clinic, and she got me that plug, and I thanked her with a Target gift card because I was so thankful. And I mailed that plug back to her. So, you know, definitely travel can happen. Now, for my hemo patients, you would have to probably arrange in the same way. I have not traveled while I'm on hemo because the pandemic happened while I was on hemo. So I have not had the opportunity to travel while I'm on hemo, but I think it's better. You would have to take some time out of your trip, 3 hours, whatever days you have planned, but you're not on hemodialysis at night because you've already done during the day. So if you want to stay out a little longer, go ahead and stay out a little longer. And that's what I'm enjoying being on hemo. There's pros and cons for dialysis, right? Peritoneal allows me to do it at home. It's very convenient. I don't have to really stop my day. But for peritoneal, I have to go in center, but then I have my night. So if I want to stay up till midnight, 1 o'clock, I don't have to, I can do that.
Gabrielle, you have to open your travel agency post-pandemic. Honestly, just listening, you already want to travel and want to give more precise guidance and checklists for dialysis patients.
Oh yeah, I definitely need to do a series. And I've been playing around with that, but life gets in the way, priorities get in the way. But I definitely need to do that because I think it'll be helpful for everybody because there's tricks and tips to do it. You know what I'm saying? You just have to be smart about it.
Trip. I have another question, which is very valuable in lupus community and also ESRD. Actually, you are the first woman I ever interviewed who had a child while being on dialysis.
Well, there's one thing, and I don't know if you've seen my stories, but AJ actually is a miracle of surrogacy. So I did not carry him. I wanted to conceive, and my husband and I had a plan 3 years after we were married that we were going to start our family. Well, lo and behold, lupus came into our life 1 year and very well new into our marriage. And so obviously that was put on hold. And not that we didn't try. We tried everything. We tried the diets. We went to a Center for Reproductive Medicine to see what we could do. But by the time that we really started being very earnest about it, lupus had already done a number on my body, and it just wasn't sensible. I do know some women who have been able to do pregnancy, and they just switched to hemo. So they didn't do stomach dialysis or PD. They did hemodialysis, and they were able to carry their child. That just wasn't an option that we were willing to try. It wasn't something that we wanted to do because it would put me at risk and would put my child at risk. And so we decided to go the route of surrogacy. And God has just blessed us to have people in our lives who were actually going to carry our child. Like we have a couple that we've grown to love. And the wife of that couple carried AJ for us full term and delivered him. Yeah, so that's why he's been the light of our life, because we went through so much to get him here. I mean, we sold our house, we used the money for him to be here. And so I told my husband, he better never, ever say that he was not wanted, because we have receipts, baby. We got receipts that you were wanted, right? Because you cost us a lot. You cost us literal money. But
so many years, right? Just so many years planning this and trying. This is incredible. And how have you came with the final decision going through surrogacy? And was it something that your medical team recommended, or just doing all your research?
There were plenty of doctors who told me that I was crazy even asking about it, but I didn't want to cut it off, because I was just holding out hope that there was some way that we could carry and conceive naturally and carefully. But it just came to the point that I had to accept facts, that I was at this point less than 4% kidney function. What was I going to do with that, with a baby that takes from your body to grow? The baby is literally feeding on you. And I was not at my best to give my baby what it needed. And so what was that going to look like? In and out of the hospital, doctor's appointments every other day. I didn't want that for me and my husband, and I didn't want it for my baby. And so we just had to come to the point and say, my body is not physically able to carry a child. And that was very hard for me to swallow, because I so wanted that experience of being pregnant and feeling the life of a child come and dwell within me and have the mother glow and be doted on and be treated like glass. You know what I'm saying? To have that, because I really never had that. Like I mentioned on our off-camera conversation, there's this stigma or role that a lot of Black women feel that they have to put on this cape. And a lot of women in general, that they have to be strong, that they have to have the solution, that they have to, provide, they don't have the time to be soft or weak or vulnerable. And I was really looking forward to that time that it was going to be all about me, to be honest. And I didn't get that. And at some points, I was jealous of my surrogate. I was. Because she was getting that connection with my son that I was not getting. And so I had to find other ways, right? I had to start picking out things for his room. And I would send voice recordings to her so he could get used to my voice. And, we hung out a lot, you know what I'm saying? And spent quality time together so I could get to know her more. And so there are ways that we got ready for him that were very off the beaten path. Nevertheless, we were ready for him, even though he came 2 weeks early. But we were ready for him to come into our life. And as we grow with him, there's never a question that he's my son. That's the affirmation that I had to say to myself while she was pregnant with my son. I had to remind myself, I am his mother. Even though the attention is on her right now, I am his mother. He is my son. And now he looks at me, he comes to me, he plays with me. We have a connection that there's never a shadow of doubt that he is my son. And so I am just so proud to have walked through that and be able to help. And I just see all of this, my lupus diagnosis, my dialysis diagnosis, my surrogacy, it all fits together in a plan where I'm able to advocate for people who are going through the craziest, most extreme circumstances. So you can't say, nobody knows what I'm going through. Somebody definitely knows what you're going through, and I'm able to provide steps to walk you through what we did. Is it going to be easy? No, but there's a way, and we were determined to find the way to have a family, and that's how our family came about. And I'm just so psyched to share a different perspective with him. You came into this world because you were chosen to come into this world. It was not happenstance. It was not a mistake. We planned for you, and you were desired and wanted. And what child doesn't want to hear that?
I'm sure he's covered in love every second,
Yeah.
and he feels all of this, and he's very happy and appreciated baby. Wonderful. And thank you so much for sharing various ways how you have to process a less conventional way of becoming a mother and going through different aspects of accepting the way how things are and acknowledging them the way that you have that endless gratitude for opportunity. And it could be really difficult not getting things the way how we want, but as you proved with your journey, learning, that is one thing we are able to do all the time, and we're able to adjust, and we're able still to gain that life we want to have. So Gabrielle, I know that besides doing all these wonderful things, taking care of your son, having a wonderful marriage, and still being very busy with your projects, you still undergo through dialysis, and you're looking for the next milestone in your life as a kidney transplant. So would love to learn more about that part of your life, and for how long you've been on transplant list so far.
Yeah. Well, I automatically was at the percentage kidney function that you needed to be to receive a transplant. Don't ask me, but I think you need to be between 15 and 20%. And so I was already there at 4% starting dialysis. So I was automatically put on a list and had to go through all the tests, everything, to make sure that not only that I was where I needed to be, but they test you socially to make sure that your mental state is good. They have a social worker work with you. So there's a lot of aspects of getting on the transplant list. And I've been on the list for 4 years. My blood type is B positive. And the thing about B positive blood types is that they're hard to find a match for. My match for kidney is another B positive and an O, because O blood type is universal, can fit for anyone. And the thing about an O is that O blood types that need kidney transplants can only take O blood types. And so imagine if it was between me, a B positive blood type, and an O blood type, and an O benefactor, or let's say someone who was a donor, a O positive donor, would go to the O, because that would be their only chance. So it's like kind of a wait and see game. I've been on the list, like I said, for about 4 years, and they say this is about how long it takes in Florida for a B positive donor to come up, or someone to match with you. I actually got a call earlier this year, but it wasn't a good fit for me. And so they decided not to go with that donor. And I haven't gotten a call yet since, but I make sure that I got my Medicare in line, because what you'll learn is in the United States that there's some bill that was passed in the 80s that insurance companies, after a year and a half or so of coverage for kidney end-stage renal disease patients that they're automatically put on Medicare. So I make sure that my Medicare premiums are up to date and that my supplemental insurance is right. So when I get that call, I'm done. And I'm not even in a great state because I don't have my bag packed. So I might do that. But yeah, I'm waiting. And I've appealed to friends. I've appealed to family. And the thing about it is, which is so maddening, is that you have to have a certain level of fitness and wellness. And so my dad is, more than willing to donate, but he's almost 70. My mom is 70 plus. They have, past cancer issues, hypertension. And so that automatically excludes them from being donors. Some of my friends want to donate, but they might not be in the best of health. So, there's a lot of factors, not just blood type, but the way anticoagulants and all kind of science that I am not an expert on work together to make sure this is the best fit for you. So right now I'm on the transplant list for a donor that way, but also appealing for a living donor as well.
Yeah, and this is so important to remember that certainly cadaver kidney that patients are assigned to the list, it's a good option, but certainly the living donor kidney usually lasts way longer time,
yes.
up to twice longer.
Yes.
I have actually one of our co-hosts, she received kidney and she just celebrated 24 years post-kidney transplant.
That's amazing.
So certainly it's so important to make sure you have the perfect match, but also living organ donor. It could be such a big difference in the long term. So as you said that for someone to be qualified to become organ donor, they have to be in their best health. They will get tested, and it's very important for people who are in a very good shape. They certainly go through all this rigorous testing that's free for them to be able to get qualified. So I wonder if anyone in our audience interested to get tested, how can they find out about your campaign and how they can learn more about your story?
Definitely. Well, I have a website that talks about some of my journey and definitely introduces you to me and what I've gone through at lupussisters.com. That's LUP as in Paul, U, S as in Sam, I as in Igloo, S as in Sam, T as in Tom, A as in Apple, S as in Sam.com, lupussisters.com, where you can learn a little bit about my story. And I have a Gmail account where I am receiving a lot of things on advocacy, as well as people who are interested in being a donor. And so you can find me at lupussisters@gmail.com, and I can be reached there. I receive all of my email. So if there's anyone interested out there who is willing and able to bless me with being with a donation of a kidney, I would be so appreciative, because I have passion to live for my son now. I have passion to possibly bring another child into this world. I have passion to live for my family, and I have a passion to live for purpose. And so, definitely that kidney would be of good use. I wouldn't be one of these people that just sit around with it, although, everybody lives their life, but I definitely have plans and I have purpose and passion that I want to continue on with. And so if it's anyone that's interested in donating to me, I will be ever so grateful. And I can be reached at lupussisters@gmail.com to learn more about that. And I can definitely share a flyer with you that I made. So if you want to include this, then that can be there as well.
We'll make sure all the links and flyers included in this podcast and hear your reflections and maybe recommendations for other patients who are recently diagnosed with lupus nephritis and maybe still have a difficulty to taking those diagnoses and knowing how to act about it.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot that I could say, but I'm going to make a priority of the list I'm going to give you. First, it's going to be hard, but it is not life-ending. If that's the one thing that I could tell you, or anyone who is dealing with a lupus diagnosis and a lupus nephritis, we are so far advanced in medication and innovations in medicine. It does not have to be life-ending. The power resides within you to make the decision that you want to do the best you can do to take care of yourself. And that's the start. And you only can go up from there. Once you make the decision that you're going to do the best you can do, there are some things that are out of our control. Obviously, me going on dialysis was not my choice, but I had to adapt to that choice and say, even in this, I'm going to do the best I can do. Set boundaries. You can't be everything for anything and everybody. You have to make time for yourself. You have to take time to rest. You have to time to sit back and reflect and process all the emotions. It's hard, but you can do it. You can process through and make a decision that you want to live the best quality life possible. Follow your treatment plan and be honest with your professionals in your life, your health professionals, your doctors, your therapists, your support systems in your life, your husband, your wife, your kids, your friends, your community. Some people don't have immediate family that are there for them, but there's a community out there that is looking to help you and to walk you through everything that you're going through. So where there's a will, there's a way. You just have to seek it out. Once you're open about, people talk about the universe, I say once you're open to it and you're out there talking about it and you're asking for help, you can't imagine the doors that will open to you, really. So make yourself a priority. You can do this. It's not life ending, it's life changing. And there's silver linings along the way. There's life lessons along the way that you never would have learned if you had not been diagnosed. I know that's a different way to look at it, but I've been able to do things that I would have never been able to do if I didn't have lupus. I've traveled to Atlanta multiple times to talk. I've been asked to speak at different events in New York. You know, a lot of opportunities have come my way because I was bold about living with lupus and helping people. And so that's what I feel like my journey is here, is to be that leg up, that to help push someone up that is, you know, recently diagnosed, and to help walk them through their journey. Because there's a lot that goes on. You just never know when you're going to learn different news, but you know, there's always community, there's always support out there to help you, for sure.
Gabrielle, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure learning your story, and I just appreciated of your strong and powerful voice in the advocacy community, inspiring patients to better understand the silver lining of this journey and understand their inner strengths that allows them to be guided and to really look for those next milestones in their life. And it was such an inspiration to hear your reflections and the way how you approach such a challenging diagnosis and how you carry yourself through life with us. But I'm just looking forward for you receiving kidney and inviting you to the follow-up podcast and hear your reflections, taking that experience in your life.
Yeah, I can't imagine it because I got a lot of energy now and I just can't imagine what I could do with the new kidney. So if you're out there, give me that opportunity. I'll show you what I'll do with it.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for joining. It was such a pleasure.
No problem. Thank you, Natalia.
Thanks so much for staying with us. And if you liked our channel, make sure to subscribe to us on Facebook, Spotify, and iTunes podcast. Thanks so much.